moms get a bad rap. Every time somebody's got autism or any kind of disorder, moms always get the flag. Oh, you didn't eat right for your pregnancy, or women need to be really careful and take care of themselves. Or what about the dudes, right? Like, the dudes should have some responsibility, and it's actually so. It's kind of cool. Your microbiome, it is seeded when you are born through the mother's birth canal. So, gross as it might sound, guys, this is nature. So, buckle up, buttercup. Let's get serious. So when the baby is passing through the birth canal, it swallows the microflora that the mother has in the birth canal. And guess what, guys? How do I put this? I remember one guy telling me one day, if God was so smart, why did he put the amusement park next to the sewer? You get my meaning? So actually, that was super smart of God, because the father's sewer system is seeding the mother's amusement park. Does that make sense? And then it's the mother and the father's microflora that the baby is swallowing, that's seeding their gut, because before that, the baby doesn't have any bacteria in its intestinal system and in its gut or anywhere else. It's in a pretty pristine environment. So guys, if you're drinking too much and adding too much yeast or not eating well, you bear some of the responsibility too. It's not just about your DNA. Your microflora has a ton to do with what happens to that child of yours. So let's all get healthy here, huh? So when we're talking about your microflora, a few things to note if you are trying to prevent autism in your child. Guys, get healthy, ladies, get healthy, and make sure that your microflora is good. Start eating a probiotic. Better yet, and for autistic kids, this is actually really crucial. Our ancestors used to eat fermented foods of all kinds. Every nationality has their fermented foods. For Indians, it's lassi, yogurt for Europeans and South Americans, and there's fermented foods in Germany, fermented vegetables like sauerkraut. There's kimchi in Korea. So everybody has their fermented vegetables and fruits and kippers in London. So, it was pretty standard until now. The Western diet and all this fast food and not really eating the way we used to anymore has made it difficult for us to keep that microbiome healthy. So here's a trick to it. If you need to buy it, just make sure it's as natural as possible. Yoplai's not going to do it. It needs some real bacterial cultures in there. So like places like Whole Foods and markets online. Better yet, a dude in the country that's selling his wares, if he has kefir, if he has yogurts or anything like that, that's fresh and not pasteurized, you're going to get a good bang for your buck in the bacteria. Bang for your buck with the bacteria. The other thing is you can make your own. Here's the trick to it. If you're going to get anything fermented, kefir is actually more yeast oriented. All of these probiotics, like you hear about kombucha and how good it is for you, and that's not necessarily true. If you have too much yeast in your diet, you don't need to add more funguses, and kombucha is a fungus. Conversely, if you have too much bacteria in your diet, you don't need to add more bacteria, you need to add more funguses. So it's all about keeping the balance. So just remember that. It's not cut and dry. There's lots of different strains of bacteria that you have to have in your body processes, or for your body process to take place. So do yourself a favor and do that stool test I told you about, yourself and your children, to make sure you know what it is that you're lacking so that you know how to feed it appropriately, because you don't want to go adding something that you already have enough of and not getting, crowding out what you already are deficient in and ending up with less. So the trick to a lot of this fermented stuff, if you do have yeast, an overabundance of yeast, which most of us have these days just because of the prevalence of antibiotics, and both prescribed and also in meats and milks and our food these days, make sure that you don't have vinegar in your fermented foods. There's lots of places you can get just salt and water preserved vegetables. If you think about it, we had such a great system before because, the times of the year where your immune system would be low, because the gut is the majority of the immune system, right? If you watch Activia commercials, it says 80% of the immune system is in the gut, and it is. And so that's why you want to make sure it's your microflora that are dealing with your immune cells and telling it what to do and how to, your immune cells are reacting to it. But it's essentially the communication between your bacterium and your yeast and your gut, your microflora, and your immune system that makes you healthy or not. And for the most part, that's 80%, approximately, according to Activia commercials. Anyway, so make sure that if you get fermented vegetables, any kind of sauerkraut, kimchi, whatever, it's just salt and water. There's no vinegar in it. And then, if you're dealing with a yeast issue, also make sure there's no metals in those things. So there's an ingredient called alum, A-L-U-M, and that stands for aluminum. Yeah, there's aluminum in your food. Pickles, those melty cheeses, the baking soda has it, baking powder has it. So make sure you're getting aluminum-free stuff. And then even cooking on aluminum and drinking out of aluminum cans. Anything acidic, like cola, that touches aluminum, even coffee that's run through an aluminum filter, make sure you have a paper filter to make sure the acid in the coffee doesn't touch the metal. That's why filters are important in coffee. If you have like a metal filter basket. And then if you're going to cook with aluminum, make sure, I wouldn't recommend cooking on aluminum. You just to trade your pots and pans, cook on glass, cast iron, limited stainless steel, but aluminum is like a real bad thing, and so are Teflon and all those other fake, lined with chemicals kind of stuff. That's going to give you problems. So anyway, that's a little bit more about yeast and the microbiome and metals. Oh, and when we were chelating Holden, as the yeast was dying off, we got this stuff called Candex. That was really awesome. You have to use it away from food. Otherwise, it's going to tear you up. But it eats away at the yeast. But while the yeast is dying, it's producing more alcohol. So you go through something called a healing crisis, where you get worse because there's more alcohols happening while the yeast is like, dying. So we use this product called Enteros Gel. It works a lot like activated charcoal and bentonite clay. And so it absorbs, it kind of goes behind. Like we use the Candex and the Enteros Gel together so that while the Candex was killing the yeast, the Enteros Gel could mop up all the alcohols being produced by it. Because he was climbing the walls, when he was just getting the Candex, we thought they were going to call CPS on us. He was screaming so bad. It just completely calmed him down. So, we had dealt with the yeast, and now we were chelating it, made the yeast worse, and now we had to find a way to alleviate that for him while he went through the chelation process. So Enteros Gel, they used it in Russia after Chernobyl for the radioactive fallout victims, and also they tend to use it for a hangover cure because it's mopping up all the alcohol. So if you have a hangover, Amazon has a bunch of Enteros Gel you could use. You just have to make sure you take it away from food. Anyway, that's my last 2 cents. I'm going to go get my car. See ya.